Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Legislative Investigations Committee. We're hearing LO 25-0041, an oversight hearing on strengthening Renter Safety Act. My name is Councilman Isaac Gitzer-Schleifer, chair of the committee. To my far left is Council President Cohn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I saw Councilman Gray as well. And I'd like to thank everybody, all the agencies for joining us. We are going to get started with opening remarks from Council President Cohn, and then we'll jump right into the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you to our friends from the Department of Housing and Community Development for joining us. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you especially, though, to Baltimoreans who made the trek through the cold and ice to tell us about their experiences living in housing that we would consider substandard. I want to specifically thank Mr. Lawrence Horton, Mr. Richard Grant, I see Ms. Sarah Matthews, and all of the Baltimoreans who have joined us here today. We also thank Carolyn Tripp from Maryland Legal Aid, who helped craft this legislation. We are here tonight to discuss the Strengthening Renter Safety Act, because as city leaders, we have a moral obligation to protect our most vulnerable residents. A few years ago, I did a tour of senior housing. I was joined in part by my vice president, who I see coming in, and we toured different housing facilities across Baltimore. Some were great, but some were not. What I saw in some of those buildings was frankly appalling. Broken elevators and HVAC systems, rats and roaches, mold and mildew, multiple unabated violations and 311 reports with no real consequences. Just today, my colleagues and I stood in front of a building with Councilman Blanchard in the 11th District with a broken elevator and a massive bed bug infestation. I also heard from residents who were desperate because no one was helping them. Their repeated requests to landlords were being ignored. The housing department was limited in how it could escalate these issues. In 2024, the City Council passed the Strengthening Renter Safety Act. My colleagues and I developed this legislation for one reason: to expand protection for renters who have had to live in unsafe and unsanitary conditions while appealing in vain to unresponsive landlords. And I am so glad we are convening today, 1 month into implementation of this critical law, to understand how the housing department is managing it. The Strengthening Renter Safety Act requires the HCD to create a list of buildings referred to as the priority dwelling units list. Properties make it onto this list if their landlords have repeatedly failed to make needed health and safety repairs despite repeated requests from residents, citations from the city, and failing scores from federal housing inspectors. These photos point to the conditions facing some of our residents here in the city of Baltimore. Mold, rodents, dirty tap water, and having to heat apartments with stoves and box fans in freezing weather. No one should have to live like this. Once on the list, properties become priorities for enforcement actions, which is why they're referred to as priority dwelling units. The most concerning buildings will be subject to increased inspections and penalties. Building owners or operators will be required to attend meetings with the HCD to discuss what they need to do to fix their buildings. And all such buildings will be required to post their rental license numbers in public spaces or any notices given to them if they fail to obtain a rental license. If owners and managers of the high violation properties fail to meet with DHCD or fail to fix a violation notice issued during a priority inspection within the time frame required, their license can be revoked. On the other hand, if landlords make the needed repairs, they will have no problems. Let me be clear. This law does not affect the thousands of responsible landlords in this city who abide by our laws and respect their tenants. To those folks, we say thank you for investing in Baltimore. Or if you're a property owner that has had some problems in the past, but you're willing to work with us to remediate and fix them, you'll be fine as well. This law targets only the worst of the worst who routinely mistreat their residents, break the law, and refuse to make repairs. Tonight, we'll hear from people and agencies about this law's implementation. And we are open to tweaking the criteria for the priority dwelling list to make sure we are truly capturing the worst of the worst. Again, I want to thank representatives of the administration, Housing Commissioner Kennedy, DHCD for being here today and for their partnership in implementing the Strengthening Renter Safety Act. Residents across Baltimore are counting on us to get this right and to move quickly to require substandard buildings be repaired. With that, I will turn things back to Chairman Schleifer to get the proceedings going.
Thank you, Mr. President. First up, we'll hear from Richard Grant. If you can come up to the podium. Hit the right button until your microphone lights up red, and then you can begin. Hit the right button. There you go.
Okay. Good afternoon, and to the Honorable President and Vice President of the City Council and City Council members, thank you for an opportunity to address you this afternoon. I want to emphasize that the Strengthening Renters Act and the Safe Homes Now initiative is very important to the renters here in Baltimore. We need your help because landlords are arrogant and they do not respond very well to tenants' complaints. I'm 80 years old and I've been living at Wayland Village Senior Apartments for at least 15 years. Among my many ailments is that I have COPD and I am also anemic. Our apartment building has been without HVAC to the tenants for years. Some have complained of not having HVAC for 10 years, 15 years, even 5 years. It's like you pay your rent, and in the winter you live in a freezer, and in the summer you live in an oven because of the heat and the changing weather that we're experiencing throughout the world. It does affect Baltimore as well. Initially, we addressed our landlords and asked for help. And the situation was that the landlord provided heaters, space heaters, and as you know, space heaters only heat space. They don't heat your entire apartment. So these heaters were sometimes kicking off the breaker, and in some instances they were sparking with electrical sparks coming from them. So it was a dangerous situation that we were living in. It came to the point where it was necessary for us to address code enforcement to get involved. We called 311 and they came out and inspected the system, but the system cannot be fixed for reasons that are related to getting parts and the company, the manufacturer's gone out of business. So we're living in this apartment and paying our rent and not getting what we're contracted for, so to speak. So in the summer, I had the occasion to have to run many fans to stay cool. Sometimes I had to go to the library to be cool. Sometimes I would make unannounced visits to my relatives, which sometimes didn't go too well, but I was able to get some air conditioning. And in the winter, it was necessary for me to put a fan on top of my stove and open my oven to try to get heat into my apartment. This only worked to a certain extent because the heat is not going to go but so far. It was necessary for me to go to bed with clothes on and extra pairs of socks to stay warm at night. So it has been a real rough time because in the summertime I have to struggle with breathing under these conditions because of my condition. And like many of my neighbors who also have these kinds of limitations because of their age or because of their disabilities, it's very rough on us not having HVAC. But the heat was unbearable during the summer, and during the wintertime, it was challenging. After many requests from my fellow tenants, I got involved by going to code enforcement. Then I went to legal aid. Once we went to legal aid got involved. The landlord was suddenly interested in responding to helping us out. So we were able to get some codium of heat from some space heaters that we were provided. But it's very difficult for us because many tenants are afraid to complain. Many tenants are afraid they might get put out. And if you think of the three most difficult things in life is a person losing their life, losing their home, or not being able to eat, living in a facility that doesn't provide you with sufficient heat or air conditioning is a fear, and people do not feel comfortable maybe complaining about this. But we eventually got help again from legal aid, as I stated, and we're presently in an escrow action. And it seems that once we filed that, the landlord was more interested in helping, but they still have not provided the kind of HVAC, central air, that we need. And we would ask you to consider these bills to protect us because we are not lawyers. We're not as sophisticated as maybe others are. And we're depending upon you guys to pass this legislation and enforce it. The most important thing is to enforce it because what I'm hearing is that sometimes code enforcement goes out and they find that there are violations, but they'll still license these facilities. And we want you guys to come up with some sort of system, and it seems like you have, to protect us and provide some sort of long-term solution to these problems. And with that, I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. Next up, Caroline Tripp.
Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Tripp, and I'm a housing attorney at Maryland Legal Aid. I've worked with tenants at properties across Baltimore City, including several on the new priority dwellings list. I welcome the strengthening Renters Safety Acts, new enforcement tools, and the creation of the priority dwellings list, but I'm concerned about implementation. Laws are only as strong as their implementation, and in my experience, the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, has demonstrated an incapacity to do what is already required under the law. I have seen DHCD issue licenses for homes with rodent infestations, roach infestations, and bed bug infestations, even after tenants called 311 to report the conditions. I've seen DHCD issue license for properties with open code violation notices and properties that have submitted incomplete or facially deficient licensing applications. One story comes to mind when I think about DHCD's failure to implement existing licensing law. In August 2025, over a dozen tenants at one of the properties on the priority dwelling list called 311 to report unsafe conditions in their homes. DHCD inspectors visited the property and issued over 100 violations, many for dangerous defects that could potentially be life-threatening. In October 2025...
Excuse me, could you speak more into the mic? Some folks in the back can't hear you.
Yes, is that better?
Yep, much better, nice.
Thank you. Then in October 2025, DHCD inspectors re-inspected that property and found that all of the violations had been abated or resolved. This was extremely concerning to me because while the landlord had made some repairs, tenants told me that most of the issues remained outstanding. One home was found to have 12 violations in August 2025, including a defective stove gasket, which is the lining around the stove that makes sure gas and heat doesn't leak out, and back stairs that were so rusted that there were holes where you're supposed to be stepping to get down the stairs. When the inspector visited in August 2025, he took a picture of the damaged gasket and noted stove oven door gasket defective, large gap missing area. He issued a violation for this issue. Same thing with the rusting stairs, took a picture, took a note of it, and issued a violation. In October, the tenant told me that the stove had not been repaired, even though the inspector had marked the violation as invaded.
I'm sorry, again, folks can't hear.
Sorry.
If you could speak directly into the microphone.
In October, the tenant told me that the stove had not been repaired, even though the inspector marked the violation as abated. In November, I visited that tenant's home with Councilmember Zach Blanchard and Council President Zeke Cohen. We observed that the stove gasket was still damaged and took a picture that looked basically identical to the picture the inspector had taken in August 2025. There was a large fraying gap. The back steps had been spray painted black, but nothing had been actually done to treat the rust, and there were still holes in the stairs. Yet the inspector had visited and marked both of these issues resolved. I requested and received the inspector's logs and the pictures he took. They showed that on October 2nd, the same inspector who considered the stove a violation in August returned to the home. He took a picture of the stove with his clipboard covering the damaged area and wrote down, "Stove oven door repaired." It hadn't been repaired, as I observed with the councilman a month later when we visited, without a clipboard to block our views. The same inspector also took new pictures of the rear steps. He didn't think that the spray paint was enough to resolve the issue and noted rear metal porch has large rust spots throughout the deck area. Nevertheless, the unit passed inspection and the violation on those steps was lifted. We visited 3 more homes with the councilman, and each home observed the issues that had been marked abated still existed. Because the code violation notices were marked resolved, that landlord was able to obtain a rental license from DHCD. The landlord is able to collect rent from low-income tenants living with life-threatening conditions because DHCD's inspectors failed to truthfully document conditions and hold the landlord accountable. So while the Strengthening Renters Safety Act is good legislation, I'm concerned that DHCD will not implement it properly because the same issues that plagued DHCD in October 2025 still exist today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Lawrence Horton.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lawrence Horton. I live at 911 Sharp Leadenhall. I've been living there for over 15 years. When I first moved in there, the conditions were a lot better than what they are now. Since then, for the last 2 to 4 years, we've went from having security in the 911 building to not having anyone. You know, there's a lot of senior people who live there. We've also, in 2024, because of deteriorating conditions, we had to form a tenant council and to address some of these issues, and we called in legal aid to help us do that. Since then, we've had to file claims, escrow cases, because none of the issues were still not being addressed and still aren't addressed today. We've called 311 several times. We've also seen, you know, where the trash wasn't being removed, the trash wasn't being dumped. People had mold and mildew in their homes. In the complex and in the building, still wasn't addressed. We've called the management company several times. We met with them first and foremost when we initiated, before the escrow cases, to see if they would address some of these issues. They still took forever to even recognize us until we got contacted, you know, the media and got involved. Only then was they still didn't, they still weren't able to address the issues as far as security issues, people coming, vagrants coming in, sleeping in the hallways in the building, rats and rodents. We did a tour with the president and of the city council and the councilman, Zach Blanchard, and you could see the rat holes and everything were still there. And they knew we were coming and didn't even bother to attempt to fix it. This building, this complex at Sharp Leadenhall, the building, 911, didn't have a license in over a year and was bringing eviction notices and everything to the court. And, you know, they were still getting partial. My concern and our concern is, one of our concerns, in spite of the living conditions, was how they were still getting money from HUD and subsidized housing when they didn't have a license, when they were unlicensed for over a year, you know. So I guess they didn't have to act. They were still getting the majority of their money, in spite of 1/3 that the tenants who were on subsidized income pay or subsidized had a housing voucher or something, you know. As of October the 31st, they received their license, and a lot of the issues still weren't addressed. You know, they were still in court for a lot of the issues, and they hadn't been fixed. Even today, they're still going in the process of addressing some of those issues. I've met with the management team throughout this, even today, even the snow thing, I had to meet with the director of their maintenance to get them to plow the sidewalks. We had people who couldn't get out to go to their chemo appointments. A lady had to miss her chemo appointment because her steps and her sidewalks weren't done. Another lady had an emergency and had to go to the hospital by ambulance, and the fire department called 311 on them because the ice and everything on the sidewalk, it was real hard for them to get up there and bring her out. You know, these conditions have been going on for over 4 years, you know, and they've only gotten worse. You know, part of it is, like Mr. Grant said, people are scared. Some of these people have in-house Section 8, where if they leave, they don't have the voucher, and, you know, they're scared to complain. Certain retaliation efforts have been put forth to them, you know, by the management company. They talk to people like they don't have a right to say anything about it. That's why we organized and started a tenant council. It's affect people, and it affected me, you know, physically. I'm a disabled veteran, and, you know, there are several veterans and disabled people who live in that complex and in that building, you know, and the quality of life has dropped for us in that complex because of how we're treated and how long it takes to get some of the simplest things fixed. You know, we operated with one maintenance man for about 6 months, and you're talking about 190-something units, you know, and stuff just wasn't getting done. Since then, you know, since the media coverage and the escrow case, they've started to move around somewhat. However, we still have a door to the building that's been unsecured for this. Today will make the 4th week. And I spoke to them about that, and they're, you know, some of the same issues are still going on, you know, and it's not getting any better. So, and I don't know how they're getting licensed. You know, there's an issue with that too. That's on our part. You know, these people pay their rent on time, and service they're being provided is substandard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, DHCD. Who's presenting?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Alice Kennedy, Housing Commissioner. Deputy Commissioner Jason Hessler will present and run through the PowerPoint for us this afternoon.
I'm sorry, who was it?
Deputy Commissioner Jason Hessler will run through the PowerPoint
Okay.
on
Yeah, if you
behalf
can
of
just-
DHCD this afternoon.
All right. You can run through it quickly. You have the clicker?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We are timing him.
That's what I heard. Jason Hessler, Deputy Commissioner for Department of Housing and Community Development. I have the clicker. The clicker is not working. There we go. I'm going to skip over the what is the Strengthening Renters Safety Act, because Council President really covered that in his remarks, and it really does boil down to just the purpose is for safer rental housing. The focus with the act is on buildings that have 20 or more units and that meet 2 of the 4 criteria. If you meet 2 of the 4 criteria, you are considered a priority dwelling. Those 4 criteria are that you have violation notices that did not get abated for over 90 days, you had 4 or more notices in a calendar year. There is the number of 311 calls compared to the number of units in the building matches up with a chart that's provided in the law. So if you have too many calls for service that are life, health, safety related, then you could meet one of the criteria. And then the final criteria is specific to HUD-funded properties with their Inspire score. And if it's a score of 79 or less, and that's the reinspection score that HUD gives the property. So those are the 4 criteria. If you meet 2 of those, then you're considered a priority dwelling. DHCD initiated our outreach effort by sending a letter and then following up with a postcard to all of the properties we identified as having 20 or more units, just to make sure that they were aware that the law had passed and what it meant. And in that letter and the postcard, they both had a QR code. That had a link to our website. So we had our website up in October, end of October, beginning of November, that had additional information beyond the letter for what to expect with the Strengthening Renters Safety Act. Once we got into the new year and the law became effective, we ran the data necessary to see which of those 1,046 properties met the priority dwelling criteria. And that landed with 38 properties being identified as priority dwellings. We mailed out letters to all of those dwellings, and then we hand-delivered copies of those letters to the rental offices to make sure that they received them. We have updated Code Map with a priority dwelling icon and a high violation priority dwelling icon. So that is available on Code Map if you have that layer turned on. On our website, we created the required notification if a property does not have a rental license. So this is an example of what a property owner should use to post on the property if they do not have their rental license, and they need to, even after getting their rental license, it's supposed to stay up for 90 days, providing information to the tenants and anyone else that what the rights and responsibilities are of the owner and what the rights of tenants are. Other work that we did was some updates to our software to make sure that we could log the priority dwellings as inspections that were available. And the bill also changed the requirement, timing for licenses from 1, 2, and 3 years to just 2 years. So we made those adjustments, and anyone getting a license after January 1st of this year would receive a 2-year license if they're eligible to receive a license. Registration staff and our investigation staff We're trained, and we also provided a guidance document to all the other staff within DHCD so that should someone come in asking about what a priority dwelling is or call, that the staff's familiar with that and can properly direct them. The priority dwelling list is on our website currently. I know last night there were some changes to the city website if people weren't aware. So if you Google it this afternoon, it might not lead you directly there. But if you're on the DHCD portion of the website or on the City of Baltimore website and you do up in the search bar strengthening, it's the first thing that pops up. So it is available. And under the frequently asked questions is a link to the list of the 38 properties.
Are we getting that? Jason, I apologize for jumping in. Please give the man 10 seconds back on his time. Are we fixing that? I did hear from a few people today who said they couldn't find it. Can we make it so that anyone that Googles it, it goes right to it?
Yeah, my understanding is with the website update that was happening, old links were supposed to just immediately go through to the correct spot in the website. And I think in many cases that is working, but on a handful of things it wasn't. And so when we identified the ones that we saw weren't working, we let BSIT know, and that team is working to adjust
so
it.
they're working on it?
Yeah, and it might already be fixed. I just haven't been able to check my email in the last 4 hours.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I had a few people telling me they had a really hard time finding it.
yeah, no, I spoke with your staff today, and they're like, did you take it down? And I was like, what are you talking about? So the list of properties are on our website. What it means to be a high violation priority dwelling is that you will be required, the property owner management company will be required to meet with the Department of Housing. Those meetings are expected to occur in February and March, and it'll be a time for the management team, the property owner, to speak with DHCD and explain how they're going to abate the open notices, address the maintenance issues, and really just better operate their property so that they are not one of these properties that needs this much attention. That will be followed up by 2 separate priority dwelling inspections. So inspections that are specially set with the property owners to look at a random set of properties that the inspectors select and Housing Inspections Management selects to see how things are going at the property and not just look at properties that might be called in for a violation or a property that the ownership wants to show us or have inspected. So that first round of inspections should occur between February and May. And then more than 4 months later, the second inspection would occur. And that's based on how it's outlined for the inspections in the law. So that second set of inspections would be expected to occur June through October, which would match up with the law. So that's 25 units, that's 50 inspections, in addition to if the tenants have a problem in between or at any point in time, they can still call 311 and inspections would still occur in relation to 311. Or if they have an escrow action, inspections would still occur in relation to their escrow action, as well as re-inspections for existing violation notices. So there may be additional inspections on the property, but at a minimum, there will be those 2. All right. I already talked about that. And then if a tenant in a high violation priority dwelling wants to have their unit inspected, but wants to remain anonymous, we are setting up with 311 the ability for them to call in a special 311 and ask that their unit be included. That will be checked by the inspections team that's going to be going out to the property. And when they give their list of these are the properties we want to include in our inspections, that property or those properties, whatever it may be, will be included. So the property owner won't know if a tenant raised their hand and said, inspect mine, or it was just picked out of a hat. And so that's how we've set up the anonymous request. Prior to the priority dwelling inspection, the landlord under the law is required to give notice to all the tenants that this is the date, this is the time when this priority dwelling inspection is going to occur. So all the tenants in the building would get that notification, get posted, in common places, and then the inspections would occur on the date scheduled. As far as enforcement, one of the major things this bill did was increase our ability to issue citations on certain violations. These are violations, for the most part, that in the past were only placed on a violation notice. So the notice would be mailed to a property owner. They would have 10, 15, usually 30 days to correct. There'd be re-inspections. If they did not correct, the only enforcement action immediately could be a failure to abate citation, which is a $250 fine, or it could be forwarded to the legal section to review it for potential court action. Now, those types of violations, while a notice can be issued, a citation could also be issued, and those citations carry significant fines. So we've been working with Environmental Control Board and BSIT to update the existing violation list to include all those citations because we need it to match up from what our inspector sees on our side to the ECBS system so that the notice, while we mail it out, it still matches up when somebody goes to pay it or asks for a hearing. It gets tracked. It's two different systems. We will continue to use our current computerized housing inspections program, CHIP, to initially do this until we switch over to our new software sometime later. We paused working on that while we were working on the permitting stuff, so we're supposed to be, it's scheduled now to pick back up in this spring, in like April. But I don't have a timeline for when we would switch over to the new system, but it doesn't matter for this. One of the reasons why we paused the enforcement side is because we could continue everything was working and we could continue operating, and the outside world wouldn't see a difference. So it's all internal. So we don't foresee any issues in tracking these citations, tracking these properties, or doing the reporting required. If someone, and this isn't really part of the bill, but we did launch several months ago a new SR for reporting a rental property that does not have a rental license, is a short-term rental property, or is a property that is non-owner occupied and not registered. So you can report 1, 2, or 3 of those things for an individual property on the same SR type, and that will go to our special investigations unit, which will investigate that, and if they can substantiate that it's rented without a license, they will issue a $1,000 citation for operating a rental without a license, or not being registered, or operating a short-term rental. So that's up and running, and public can access that from the app, from calling 311, or from their computer, laptop, tablet.
And Jason, what should they do if they find out that their building does not have a rental license?
They should call 311 or go into their phone app and report it for us to investigate. And then they can talk to council about what their rights are. On our website, we do have a list of legal information where they can reach out to see what their rights are in relation to being in a property that's not properly licensed.
Thanks.
The staffing piece, somebody want to pick that up?
Yeah, we can, I can pick that up unless, I'll go through that real quick. So in terms of property maintenance, code enforcement staffing, which falls under Deputy Booker and Assistant Commissioner Yates. Currently, we have, as of actually, I think February 4th, today, there are 4 vacant code enforcement inspector positions, which is the lowest number of vacant code enforcement inspector positions that we've had in quite some time. And we've been actively working to fill those positions. While on the slide, it shows it shows those 4 vacant. We also are in the process of creating, we've mentioned that we're doing this new sanitation inspector. So part of this includes the sanitation and enforcement inspector position, and moving that forward. So we wanted to give a quick overview, just overall in terms of where we are with code enforcement staffing.
In the property registration section, which also overlaps on this, we're currently fully staffed, which we have not been fully staffed in that office for 3 or 4 years. But we've been fully staffed for the last several months. And then within Special Investigations Unit, we have one office support specialist position that's going through background checks right now to fill that spot. We have two investigator positions that are open. One of them just opened this week.
And we have one more slide.
Yes, and then the annual report. So with the annual report, it's due May 1st. It'll be a light report this May 1st, since it is the first 4 months of it. And so we really won't have the reporting of a full year. But we'll talk about what we did to implement it, where things stand, and so you'll see the first real full report May 1st of 2027. But we're confident that we'll be able to fulfill all the requirements of the bill and report on those. Thank you. And I think with my 10 seconds I was given, I made it.
Thank you for the presentation. Next up, we are going to open the floor to public testimony. If you'd like to testify, please be sure to sign in on one of the sign-in sheets in the back. We already have some people who signed up, and so we'll start off with Sarah Matthews. If you'd like to come up to the podium and give your testimony and try to keep it to 2 minutes, that would be great. Thank you so much. You got to push the right button. There you go.
Thank you. I would like to first thank this body for finally thinking of the older adults. We have been out there fending for ourselves and felt that we did not have any support. I thank Ms. Kennedy, who met with the empowerment team to discuss some of the issues that we were having, Vice President Middleton and Councilwoman Odette Ramos. I wish I could just take all of the older adult buildings and sit them in the 5th district, because they have the best housing for older adults. The problems, first I would like to share with you the overall problems that if you ask any of us who live in older adult building, what are our issues, you would first hear inoperable elevators. Secondly, you would hear the HVAC system doesn't work properly. There's unhealthy circumstances that creates mold. There is unhealthy water. There is smoking, and as a result, there are a lot of older adults that have lung disease and public safety. And the last issue you would hear would be abuse and retaliation by the managers. I found to be very interesting, and now I understand why there hasn't been any changes in the inoperable elevator. We asked, the empowerment team asked Senator McCray to introduce some legislation, and we went down to testify for it regarding elevators. And I did my research, and I was just astonished that Dollar, who is supposed to do the inspections, don't physically do them themselves. What occurs, and this comes from the head inspector of elevators at Dollar that I spoke with, he said that the management company is responsible and they hired their own inspectors, elevator inspectors. That certification then is handed over to Dollar, and Dollar issues the certification based upon the landlord's person. And that's kind of like Ivan's person that he got and the mayor's person that he got. You're not going to hire someone that are going to share objective or, findings. And I think that I would like to have the city council to please look at that issue, because then maybe we can get some resolve, because we get stuck in the elevators and we are told that there isn't any repair service that will come out at night to repair the elevators. As in one case at Druid Park Lake Towers, a veteran who is a double amputee was in the lobby with some other residents, and the security guard announced that the elevator was inoperable and everyone who was in the lobby had to sleep in the lobby. And that's what we're told in my building as well. And the veteran had to take his medication, so he crawled from the first floor to his apartment on the 12th floor. And we cannot continue to be treated as if we don't matter. We pay our rent, and the landlord in my building, every winter, they turn up the thermostat. Everybody's thermostat is turned up to 83. And if we call Mr. Booker and request someone to come out, they said, oh, well, her apartment is, the thermostat is 83. So my friend decided to contradict that and get the real reading in my apartment. He brought me a separate thermostat. And the other day, when the manager said that it was saying 83 in my apartment, it was actually 37. And so we can't trust the managers. And the other issues that I'm concerned, because the empowerment team get a lot of complaints from all over the city. And one of the complaints that is very alarming is the number of deaths and the public safety issue in older adult buildings. There has been one murder at Druid Park Lake Towers. There was a murder, or actually an older adult was given some drugs by a younger person who lives in the building, because it's a mixed-use building, and she jumped out of the window from the 11th floor to her death this past August. And I don't think the murder at Monteverde has ever been resolved either, where there was no forced entry, but the person was found deceased. And I would think that what Senator McCray did yesterday was to ask for a database, because right now, if you go to Dollar to look at the buildings and the situation with the elevators, you're only going to find a spreadsheet, and it doesn't have a category on there that lists how long within that 12 months period, how many times the elevator has been inoperable, how long it stays that way. And there needs to be a record so that anyone, you all especially, and the general public could go to this database and look at the elevators and how long it has been inoperable. And this is a very unsafe situation. I was in my building at 4 a.m. in the morning when I do my laundry, and I heard someone crying. And I asked the young lady at the concierge, did she hear? She was, excuse me, she said, yes, it's the lady that's stuck on the elevator. I said, well, are you going to call someone? She said, no, I have to call them at 8 o'clock when management come in, because there's nothing that we can do. So I end up calling the fire department, who had to come And because of her size, excuse me, it was very humiliating because she was stuck between the floors and they could not get her up other than have 2 firemen to go underneath her and push her up and roll her on the floor in order to get her up. So this is what we experience living and renting and paying our rent in these older adult buildings.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I,
Thank you for your-
again, want to thank you for at least, Council President, I'm not clear. I thought that your legislation from last year stated, and maybe someone told me this, that if you received or housing department received certain number of complaints about a particular building, that that building could no longer be able to rent to individuals in the city. If that is not the case, it certainly should be the case. And I want to lastly point out the last week before last,
All right, thank you for your testimony.
Bell Park Towers, which is in the 5th District, I received a call from residents. The gentleman had mental health issues, and he went out to the doctor. While he was gone, the manager went into his apartment, removed everything, and destroyed everything that he had. The resident got together and bought a blow-up mattress, and that's what he was sleeping on. And also, he had initially an animal because of his mental health issue, and she called the SPCA, and they took away his cat. So the director of, I can't think of the name of it,
Well, thank you.
the Veterans Association
We got to wrap up the testimony.
took him in. Her name is Mitzi Bruce, and I had called her. And it would be a good idea if you all really came to the 2 events that we had, that Councilwoman Vice President Middleton and Councilwoman Odette Ramos came to, because Hopkins is actually doing some data for us so that when we complain to you, we want to give you some data to confirm what we are saying to you so that you have something to work with, because we have to help you to help us. And lastly, some of the worst buildings in older adult buildings in Baltimore City is Penn Plaza, which is located at Pennsylvania and North Avenue, J. Van Story on East 20th Street, Rosemont Tower, which is in West Baltimore.
Ms. Matthews,
And
I apologize. We gotta wrap it up. Just
Okay,
out
all
of
right.
respect for everybody else.
And so I could write a book, I could be here all day, but
We
I
appreciate
understand
you.
why I have to let someone else speak. But thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, next up, Samantha Grooming, I believe it says.
Thank you to the chair and to the council. I'm Samantha Gowing. I'm a tenant attorney at the Public Justice Center, which is a member of the Safe Homes Now Coalition, which is fighting for safe rental housing conditions for all in Baltimore City. And I represent tenants all the time. I see, housing condition issues, hazardous conditions are a huge issue in Baltimore City. And so it's exciting to see the Strengthening Renter Safety Act resulting in really clear and intentional enforcement of housing code and housing protections. Caroline spoke, I think, really well earlier to how enforcement is so important. We could have all the laws on the books, and if we're not enforcing them, it doesn't result in any material good to anyone's lives. And so, thank you to the Housing Department for this presentation. It's exciting to see the very intentional approach to identifying buildings, meeting with these owners, making sure they're moving towards compliance, making sure there's consequences if they don't move towards compliance. So really exciting to see kind of what the progress this is resulting in. And I think the next step is taking that same energy and going towards also the single family homes, because we know that one owner could own 100 properties, under 100 shell companies, and all the tenants dealing with conditions issues under that, non-compliant landlord deserve the same intentionality as 100 tenants in a building. So excited to see how the Strengthening Renter Safety Act can provide a roadmap to creating more intentional enforcement for everybody in Baltimore City. And the Safe Homes Now Coalition is excited to cooperate, or to collaborate, that's the word I'm looking for, collaborate more with the Housing Department on that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, Rashida Shavers.
Hello, my name is Rashida Shavers. I moved into my apartment building, which is 1 West Conway Street, Hanover Square. I moved into my apartment February 13th, 2022. 6 months later, I was raped in my apartment on August the 16th. I was in the hospital until August the 22nd. Forensics came out on August the 25th. That morning, that night it rained and my ceiling collapsed. I went back into the hospital because I didn't feel like I could stay with the gaping hole in my ceiling, and having went through the trauma of being raped. I went back into the hospital. I was there for a month, and then I came home. The ceiling still was not fixed. I still paid my rent because I didn't know not to pay my rent. That went on until they fixed it in February of 2023. So I'm not sure how many months that was, but it was quite a long time to fix the roof. A week later, it rained again. The ceiling came down. This time, they didn't fix it until 2024. So for a year, they did not fix the hole in my roof. I finally went to court. Someone told me about escrow, so I went to court. I went to take them to court. When I went to take them to court, the court dismissed it because I had the wrong management company. I didn't know who our management company was, or if we, who that person was. So they did send the inspector out. Even though they dropped the case, they sent out an inspector. The inspector came and violated the building for 3 reasons: for the hole in my ceiling, and also at the time, there was a problem with the trash, there was a problem with the elevators, and there was a problem with the heat. So in our building, in the winter, they put the air conditioning on, and in the summer, they put the heat on. So riding up the elevator, it's 90 degrees or more in the elevator and in the hallways of our building. So that's when the inspector gave them violations. From there, they came to fix the ceiling because of the violation. They came and they patched the ceiling, but then in 2025, the same day as my father passed on May 27th, and my roof collapsed the same day. Then they fixed that over the summer of 2025, and then it collapsed again in October, and then it took them a week, but they fixed that, and within a week, they fixed it. So that's several times my roof has collapsed, and I'm always afraid it collapsed in the same spot. I submitted videos of being stuck on the elevator for 30 minutes. When you pull the cord, it tells us to call our live-in maintenance, but we no longer have a live-on maintenance. And even when he was there, he was unable to, or I don't know if he was unable or just not willing, but he didn't answer the phone. So then in December just passed, some ladies were stuck because both elevators were broken, and so they were stuck, so they pulled the fire alarm. I live on the top floor, on the 14th floor, so I had to come down 14 flights of stairs to comply with the fire rules. So when I came down, and I didn't know, but the fire department came and they basically couldn't get the elevators running, and then they were angry because they couldn't get in contact with anyone to help the situation. So we were stuck downstairs. I ended up walking back up 14 flights of stairs to get to my apartment, but others weren't able. I did submit those videos as well. I called housing several times. This bag is all of court papers, documents. It's just proof on proof of everything that I've been going through while living in this building. It's just several folders of files of complaints, police reports, rent receipts, and nothing being done. I don't know about the rest of the building, but I personally have had so much trauma with living there. I've asked, I've begged, and I'm just hoping that finally someone hears us and will help. I mean, it's not easy being stuck in an elevator with no one to call. I lost my entire family in 2025. I have no mother, I have no father. If I had somewhere to go, I would go, but I don't. I have no one. So then I will look for the people in my district, my city, my councilmen, my mayors to be my family, because I don't have a family. So I'm just asking for these conditions to please change, because it's unfair.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, Bruce Terry.
Good evening. I'm from Hanover Square, and it's been hard for these last couple of years at Hanover Square. The management acts like when you talk to the management, they don't care about the people, because they got a home to go to. They got a home to go to. What we do at Hanover Square doesn't concern them. We have a patio where we cannot use to go out and sit and have little outings outside. We cannot use that. Our community room, we have to have our Thanksgiving dinners in there. We have to have our Christmas dinner, even 4th of July. We have to have it inside and sit out on the patio. And then we don't have a whole lot of outlets. So when we have to set up our little portable grills, we have to find a place where we can plug up all the grills at one time. Other than that, we cannot have a normal event like other people have. And I'm with the community, I'm the treasurer, and sometimes we do these things to try to help the community. But the management ain't working with us. They won't let us use the patio, and that is a concern because don't nobody want to be inside all the time. and our laundry room is not updated. We have 10 dryers and 10 washers. At any given time, you can have 3 dryers or 4 dryers down, and you can have the same thing with washers. And then with 190-something people trying to wash, you have to find out what time you're gonna wash because you don't have the facility to wash. I think we need an update on our washers and dryers. And on the first floor, where our maintenance man used to live, we have pipes that are having water problems, leaking. Then we got the community room where the patio upstairs in the laundry room, there's a patio, and that is leaking. That is over top of the community room. And we got a trash can in the community room catching the water. These things we shouldn't have to go through. We live there and we want to be comfortable. We want to do things. We want to have, a place where if we want to have a little cookout, we can have a little cookout. But if we can't access the patio, we have to do all this kind of stuff inside. And it's just, and with the bed bugs, we've been complaining about the bed bugs. I go to church every Sunday. Well, I was going, now I go on a Saturday. But I used to have to shake my clothes off before I go to church, because if you wear a white shirt and one of your commissioners see a bug on you, they ain't gonna want to be around you, So I had to worry about them things, I had to shake my suits out and shake everything else out before I go to church in the morning, and that should not be, that should not be, and we have a infestation of roaches, not only bed bug, but we have infestation of roaches. And I was telling
Sir, I
her-
apologize. If you could begin to wrap up your testimony, just because we got a couple other people to get to.
All right. Well,
Appreciate you.
That's quite enough right there. So I think as long as you heard that, you heard enough from me. All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Kevin Randall.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Randall, and I'm the tenant. My name is Kevin Randall, and I'm tenant council president for Hanover Square Apartments. There's a lot of things that's going on, like mainly we only have one access to get to the main road, Conway Street and Charles Street, and that's the ramp and using the stairway, which is located on the side of Conway Street. At this unfortunate time, we cannot access that because the ramp has not been plowed. There's still snow and ice there. The other situation we have is management. She's very unapproachable. You can't talk to her about any of the problems that's going on in the building. There's a lot of tenants that's afraid to go to the office and report their problems to them and put a maintenance ticket in because of her attitude. They come to us and then we try to work with them and help them out. The bed bug situation, that's an ongoing thing. We presently have one tenant that's going around the building with bed bugs on her constantly, every day, up and down, and nothing's done about it. She's still living there, and the management doesn't say anything to her about it. So that's like us tracking bed bugs back in our apartments. And then, maintenance, we have no maintenance. Crew, we had one time we did have one, lived on site. We don't have one. We have different maintenance crew coming from different sites and do here and there. And then they leave. You put a ticket in, you gotta call a number and leave a voicemail. And you gotta wait till that gets answered. You get locked out. If you get locked out, you locked out. You got to call a locksmith and have a locksmith come in and let you in. That's $80 a pop. We're seniors and we all live on a fixed income. We don't have that money to do that, you know? So it's just ongoing and something has to be done. And this is, I don't know. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, Anthony Cedarfield,
Warfield. I'm Anthony Warfield, resident of Hanover Square Apartments. I was here the last time when we was listening to them talk and say what they going, that. But anyway, nothing has changed. Far as with my apartment, nothing has changed. Maintenance guy came, the one that we did have, came out and took my air conditioner out the wall and put a cardboard up there, which the air is still coming through, and put the air conditioner back in. I have not had my heat on since it's been cold. Another thing is my stove. My stove, it works, but I only have 3 burners. One burner, you can cook, it comes on, but you can't cook on it because it doesn't cook anything. The other burner sits above where the pot slides off. Another thing is my refrigerator had 3 wheels, or 2 wheels, that constantly, when I clean behind it, rips my tile. The maintenance guy that just retired, told me that he was going to try to get me a new one and a stove. But when housing sent out their inspector, he comes in and try to test my stove. He said, oh, it's getting hot. I said, it doesn't cook anything. So my refrigerator, I said, if I move my refrigerator, it's going to rip my tile up. He said, well, we can't do nothing about that as long as your refrigerator is cold. So I'm looking at him like this. So the maintenance guy, before he left, he had somebody doing another apartment, and he came to me himself. He said, well, I ain't gonna tell the manager, but I'm gonna send him up there to put a towel down on your floor. That solved that problem by it being ripped, but it ain't solved the refrigerator where I'm still gonna have to clean behind it. Like you said, other residents said, we don't have a maintenance guy. We don't have no maintenance guy at all. And the ones that do come, he said he came for that day, and he said, what we gonna do, we're gonna fill out the tickets that see y'all got in the office, and then after that, until they hire somebody, we not gonna do anything unless the tickets are emergency. I said, no, it doesn't work like that. Far as the elevators does not have no inspections, notice, or license on it, constantly breaking down. It's a lot of things that go on. I can go on and on and on with it, but it's still, the problem is still there. The manager, like you say, she's not approachable. I told you the last time, I've been there close to over for going on 14 years. And she promised to do things in my apartment, but didn't. But every time I go approach her, she said, not now, don't come in now. You coming at me with the same thing. And then last time I came to her, she told me I could move. And I told her, don't talk to me like that. So it's a lot of things going on, and what we say is truthful. Now, the inspector came out, now they have a new regional manager that's supposed to be for that building.
Appreciate you, sir. We are going to have to wrap it up.
Okay, well, all right. But anyway.
You can wrap it up. You got a last sentence in there, please.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Appreciate you.
All right, I'm ready for up.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah.
Last up, we have on the list here for sign-ins is Jeffrey Chapman. If there's anybody else who wishes to sign up, please do so now.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Chapman.
Just gonna lift your mic.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Chapman. I'm 70 years old. I'm a resident of Hanover Square Apartments. I've been living there like 12 years. Never had my place repainted. I have COPD. When the elevator was broke, I had to walk up and down them steps. I live on the 10th floor. I have PSD.
I got caught in the elevator a couple times when they dropped down. When our dumpster was down, we had to walk up and down the steps, take our trash outside. Didn't matter what the weather was, we had to go outside. I had to give away some furniture not too long ago because of the bed bugs. I got a jar, I got 29 bed bugs in them. And it's not fair to us. And we don't have no security, like when the young lady was saying what happened to her. We have no security there. And it's not our job to secure that building. You know, that's not our job. And I feel that everybody should be safe in their environment, and we're not. You know, I'm trying to get, not to be too over passionate about that. That's my first place that I ever had that was mine. Mine, my name on there. And to get treated, I'm a vet too. To get treated like not a human being, you know, like an inhuman, but you still gotta smile and grin and say, thank you, God, for what it is. I just hope something changed. I hope y'all have a tendency to look at yourself, the way y'all live, and look at how we live.
Thank you.
And then tell me which one is better.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, did anybody else sign up that wish to testify? Seeing none, we will move on now to the committee members to ask questions. Need something? I'll do that. First up, do we, Councilman Blanchard, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the residents who are suffering through and dealing with this and having the courage to come out and get on record and talk about this. This morning at the press conference outside Hanover Square, Councilman Jones used the term dignity. And I think that is that's the word for it, right? It's about respecting people as like human beings, and it's a human rights thing. And, you know, I mean, like I counted, my district has 8 of the 35 buildings on here. A lot of the folks who came to talk are my constituents. So we have to do, you know, Commissioner, the Hanover Square, you and I talked about them. It was pretty soon after I came into office. So we got to get this right. We got to get this right. Thank you. So as has been mentioned, the Strengthening Renter Safety Act requires that buildings with extensive unmet health and safety issues be added to a priority dwelling unit list. This requirement came into effect on January 1st of this year. I understand there are currently 36 buildings on this list. This is for DHCD. Are you confident that this list includes every building that meets the current criteria?
The list is 38, but yes, we ran the criteria against our records, so we believe we've captured the properties that would meet the criteria.
All right, thank you. So how many of the buildings were added to the priority dwelling unit list because of the number of 311 calls that came in about those buildings?
Just one met that criteria.
So just one of, okay, so one of the 38. So what do you take away? What does this tell you about the use of 301 calls as one of the qualifying criteria?
I'll start an answer on that, and
Thanks.
then the deputies can fill in. I think one of the most important things that we struggle with at DHCD and have struggled with in the past is having residents across the city, whether or not they're in a multifamily building or a single family rental, is to call 311. And there are oftentimes when we do talk with tenants and they're like, well, the elevator's been out for X number of days or months, or I have no heat in my unit, or different things. We need more education, more outreach, and more to have tenants call. I think that, yes, it still is a good marker, and we need to do more as a city overall to encourage tenants to call 311 and to report, the issues that they find. And that's a difficult one too, because sometimes there are, in my conversations as well, we have tenants that are also afraid to call 311 because of retaliation from renters. So it isn't, it's kind of like a double-edged sword on that for them. So we need them to be calling 311. It also helps us. It is a key component also related to rent escrow cases, which is why it's so important, so the team can go out and do those inspections as well. So I would say, I do believe it still needs to be a criteria, and we need to encourage people to call and to do what we can do to help limit and prohibit retaliation or other things as part of those calls.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. And I'll just end by noting on the information campaign and awareness around 311s, I appreciate the work that Mr. Randall and Mrs. Pam and everybody at Hanover Square has done. We do have 73 311s just for that one building. But, it's like we had to get the city to come out and clear the snow in front of that building last week, right? So I just don't know how we make the bad property owners believe that they will actually not be able to keep making their money from doing things the way they're doing. And so that's just and I know a lot of us have that concern. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I think that that's why we are all in this room today. And one of the things, like this law that we worked with, with the council president and so forth to move forward, is specifically for that. It gives the additional enforcement abilities, and it gives the additional consequences for landlords that need to understand what those consequences are that could end up impacting their bottom line and their ability to collect rent. I think that's why we're all here today in agreement on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Council President Combs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to first acknowledge the powerful testimony that we heard today. I'm deeply grateful. It's a cold day. It's hard to get around right now, and still, residents came out, shared their stories, were willing to speak in front of the cameras, in front of the city council, and I think that says something about the resilience of Baltimoreans and people who have, in many cases, served as veterans, and people who, really importantly, are paying rent. This is not a freebie. This is not folks who are living off of the government. This is folks who have served their country and who are contributing either through Social Security, through their own income. And so we need to be really clear that these Baltimoreans who are being exploited in these dangerous buildings are contributing to our city, and they deserve great representation. Today we stood, Councilman Jones, Blanchard, Ramos, myself, in front of the Hanover, in front of the building, which has been mentioned repeatedly today, and we heard from residents there about the broken elevators, the broken HVAC system, the horrific bed bug infestation. We saw a bag of bed bugs from one of the residents that was there. This is real, and it's important that as we have this hearing, and I do appreciate sincerely the partnership from the Department of Housing and Community Development, that as we have this hearing, that we are very, very serious and focused on enforcement, as many of the residents and advocates have said today. So, Commissioner, my first question what will we see changed? In very plain terms, and I appreciated Mr. Hessler's presentation, the priority dwelling list. What should residents expect in really clear terms from the Department of Housing and Community Development that will change based on this law?
So very clearly items that will change, and then, Deputy Hessler and Deputy Booker will also step in. But one of the first things is that the properties that are identified on these lists already will be having the meetings with property management as well as the owners to review all of the open violations, all of the reasons why they have been, put onto this list, what got them on here. We have found, just in the time since the list has been published, that there were property owners that were not aware that they had any open violations or their total, like either open or the total notices, or, where they qualified or what they qualified for. So that's one of the first things is often it changes. And I know this is clear, but I want to provide information for the public as well as part of the process. A lot of times our code enforcement team under Deputy Booker and Assistant Yates, they are actively communicating with property management companies while they're trying to address different types of violation notices and so forth for buildings. But what this does is it formally brings that in a different way by requiring the meetings. They have to attend, they have to be there, and we have to see clear plan in order to abate the issues that they've been facing and have those inspections and those interior inspections as well. And that is something that is different and that you will see from the, immediately change from the enforcement standpoint are those interior inspections. As of today, we've scheduled 15. We've scheduled 15 meetings of those
I hope one of
initial
those
meetings.
15 was with the Hanover that's been mentioned several times today.
Yeah.
I actually met with the regional manager 2025, so about 3 months ago. We met and we discussed action plan. So as Mr. Warfield stated, not being able to get in contact with the property manager, we went beyond the property manager and we're talking and working with the senior regional manager regarding that building.
I appreciate that, and yet it still seems pretty unacceptable that there's no property manager on the property to address the tenant's concerns.
Yeah.
That should be, no maintenance person there. That should be bare minimum. And again, we were there today, and it does not seem like much has changed, and based on the testimony that we heard.
Yeah, and that's why we want the tenants to continue to contact 311 because they are on the priority list, dwelling list as well.
They absolutely need to call 311. One of the things is that there isn't anything in the property maintenance code or within the license that requires the local property maintenance person to be on site, on the building, accessible at any time. So,
Understood, but they got to be able to get to someone. And I'm not mitigating in any way, shape, or form that folks should still call 311. I think the fact that you had 15 people show up here today and were willing to testify in front of the city council says that people are not afraid. They are willing to do the work. They're willing to dial 311 on their phone. And we still have to make sure that this property owner is doing right by these tenants and that there is someone that can answer their concerns.
yeah, not questioning whether or not they have a right or should be able to contact someone. I am being very clear for the public so that there isn't an expectation that somehow we can force their
Understood.
hand through enforcement to have somebody on site or that will actually answer the phone. And that's what I was just trying to be clear on. But we agree that if you are a property manager, if you are an owner and you hire a property manager, then as the property management company, you should have a very clear understanding of what it means to be a property manager for that entity and for that building and what those rules and responsibilities are. I've talked about this with Ms. Matthews. I've talked about this actually with Councilwoman Ramos, in terms of what that looks like, and that is part of being able to effectively create a space that is safe and dignified for our residents. And we believe that and understand and appreciate everybody that did testify today, because that is one of the key things that is also missing here, is that responsiveness, is that training component. Like hearing, I forget if it was Miss Matthews, I think it was Miss Matthews, that was stated, the one person, the management person on duty or whoever is on duty, someone's stuck in the elevator and they're like, I'm sorry, there isn't anything I can do. That is a training issue, because the first thing that you do is you call 911. So we want to be encouraging. We do hear everybody's, statements. We know that it is disheartening to be paying rent and to not be receiving. It's a change of goods and services. And it is not only disheartening, but as the councilman and you stated before too, there's a level of dignity associated with that. And, we want to continue to work to do that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I will say that, even just today and the last couple of days, I've gotten a number of calls from landlords, property owners who were on the list, and there was sort of a jolt that went out. And I actually think that's a good thing. Wake some people up, get some people to do the right thing by our folks. I do want to ask, do we have, in your opinion, the right criteria? We spent a lot of time as we were writing this legislation, tried to be very deliberative, many conversations with you, Commissioner, and Deputy Hessler, and Booker, and Yates, and all the rest, trying to figure out what are the right ways in order to quantify and determine who are the worst of the worst. And what I don't want to do is have folks caught up in that system that are trying to do right by their tenants. So I'm curious, just from DHCD's perspective, this thing has been live for a little while now. Do we have the right set of criteria in order to capture the worst of the worst slum landlords?
I think we're going to find out shortly. I don't think we know completely now. I think this is a good start for where we're at. And, I've had discussions with members of the council and our team. There were a couple properties on this list that I was surprised to see there, that I wouldn't expect. But in fact, I lived in one of the properties on this list when I started at housing, and I think it probably landed on the list because of the number of units there and the possibility of having violation notices and getting a large number. We want to get at the properties that hit on the testimony we heard here, where particularly are more at-risk populations, the elderly, where not being able to take an elevator has an even larger impact than it would on, someone that's 20. So we want to make sure that we're, getting the right properties on the list. We will continue to look into it. And if we have changes, we know that we can come to the council and adjust to make sure that we're getting at the right properties.
Yeah, just on that point, and I'm going to turn it back to the chair. I want this to be an ongoing dialogue. We want to figure out what are the right set of criteria. How can we make sure that our extremely limited but important enforcement muscle is targeted onto the right set of bad actors? And for the folks that, again, are trying to do the right things and may have had some mistakes in the past, but are actively working to fix their properties, there needs to be a path to remediation. There needs to be a path to get off the list eventually. But for the folks that are persistently causing harm with the bed bugs, the broken elevators, the HVAC, all of that, the horrific story we heard about the ceiling collapsing multiple times, that needs to be fixed. And we need to hold people accountable for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I add one sentence in response to that? One of the key things that we need to, that in order to work to ensure as well, like the right people on the list and that we're not missing or something, property owners need to take also more and pay more attention to what they're doing, because some of the property owners aren't aware of what is happening with the property management. So I'm going to double down on that statement from earlier as well.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Jones.
First, I just want to thank everyone for their testimony, your powerful testimony. It's your testimony and the people who experience it every day that kind of really reminds us the impact that this has on people's everyday lives. And I just want to say it hasn't gone unnoticed. And thank you for the advocates in the room who continue to advocate for the folks here today and make sure that they have the protection that they deserve. Because often I receive some of those phone calls and I have to direct them to you all, you know, when it comes to dealing with the court system and showing them how to support, because there is limited amount that, you know, the city can do, which kind of, you know, directs me to my question to, you know, DCHD, which is around like the financial aspect of some of these buildings. As I hear from many residents who live in these buildings about the repairs that need to be done, often what they hear from the owners is that they just don't have the funds, you know, in order to fix some of these things. While I know you have yet to have conversations with some of these individual owners in different property management companies, I'm just curious of like, what do you see the solution is that I often, to the problem that I often hear, which is we don't have the money. So if upon, you know, your investigation, you're hearing somebody, well, we're strapped for cash and we can't make some of these repairs, well, one, do you know how many of these buildings that is the case for, which I know you haven't talked to all of them, so, but upon finding that out, because I hear it from some of them, kind of what is the next steps in those situations?
So we don't know until we have conversations if a property owner states that there's a cash flow issue that would be able to impact their, what we consider to be preservation of units, as well as in some instances, preservation of affordable housing units. We will have to cross that bridge when we get to it to see if and what any entities state. You know, we do have some resources for the preservation of units that could look to repair programs through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but they have to apply, and it's for 50% and 30% AMI and below. But I will also state that sometimes on some of these properties, depending upon how they're financed and what mortgages they have, what HUD funding they have in, which loan product they were using, it can be more difficult for them to figure out how to resyndicate or how to pull equity out of the property in order to resyndicate, to do repairs, or to make the numbers work. So in some instances, it is definitely a valid, it isn't something that I think that property owners, some property owners might say that to say that, and some property owners can prove and have the financial backup to show what the situation is. We do have, like I said, the one resource, but we will just have to figure out, once we see what some of the responses are, you know, what that leaves for some people. But we can't solve that problem necessarily for them.
And just as a follow-up to that, I've been so frustrated. I've had conversations with the organizations who say, I don't think we've done it here in Baltimore, but in other cities, there are organizations that take the ownership from these building owners to another third-party organization that will stabilize it and give the tenants the type of living situation they deserve. Just want to know, like, that's the furthest extent. Would you all be committed in supporting having things happen like that?
We absolutely support that.
Okay, good, thank you. That's what I
Mr.
wanted.
Chair, that's actually my bill that's been introduced, so we already are in the process. So, yeah,
Thank you
that's
for
in
your
my bill.
service.
Sorry.
And DHCD has stated clear support for that before, and as of here, you also have our support for that publicly, also for the tenants as well here, as well.
All right, thank you. Council Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, President Cohen, for really introducing this bill. And it's just a very serious bill, listening to the testimony. And all of the testimony was deep and sincere. And I do want to just really highlight the young woman that had all of those other problems, and then including coming here and sharing her rape story as well. I mean, this is how deep some of the situations are. So I hope when this is over that someone from the city does reach out, particularly to this young woman, because she was pleading for more help in other things because she expressed how alone she is. So I hope that's taken care of. And then this also brings me back to when I was introducing the Security Deposit Relief Act bill for renters and trying to help in that situation, and hoping that funding will be replenished for that, because these two acts can really help and work hand in hand. And on that note, thank you, Housing, for working with the president and his office and really trying to get some sincere legislation here that can really help what's going on. So my question, one of the places on the list was this Palmer place on Palmer Avenue, which is an unlicensed facility. And I got some information, in fact, just today, that the facility is unlicensed, has not had any water in the building for 3 days. And I was told that, and I'm sharing this because there clearly is some, and we know that there's problems we're trying to correct, so I want to bring it to light. There's clearly some dysfunction and communication between agencies. There's, because this also includes the fire department, there's different stories being told of how this water was basically the reason why it was cut off in this building. So, but if you do that, here you have people in an apartment complex that need their water, but it was cut off because of something next to the apartment. So I don't know how true that is, but DPW is going back out there again, probably as we speak, to verify that it's another issue. And it all goes back to the property owner landlord, which if they're listening, you are still the person responsible for this building. And that's what we really want to hone into, how to make these owners accountable. We hear conversations about elevators. We know that the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulations really are the ones that monitor elevators. How can the city or housing, there might need to be some kind of improvement in that connection, because we have loads of elevators in so many buildings in the city that you really need to look at that alone, just because of the age of some of these places. Could you just maybe give a scenario of what you do now for emergencies? And again, this also goes back to staffing of code enforcement and so on, but how do you handle emergencies like when water stops? And just kind of explain that, because it probably needs to be some improvement in that as well.
And I do want to just briefly thank the Vice President. She chaired the committee we passed this bill in. I don't know if you remember that, Madam VP, but appreciate your support and your leadership on this as well.
I'll start with water and then have Deputy Booker talk a little bit about the elevators, because that is something that often comes up. Sorry, I was not talking into the mic. That often does come up. But we do coordinate with the fire department and DPW. There are certain periods of time that DPW does address if they've had to address a water main or other things, and they have in processes to deliver water to residents that are impacted, et cetera. Depending upon the scale of the situation, our crisis services team that's led by Director Chanel Manigo would be deployed to the scene, and she gets deployed to the scene either through OEM, through Director Henderson and OEM, through fire, or typically through fire directly as well. And often in situations, we also work in certain situations. If there is an emergency situation that is a responsibility of the landlord or the tenant, we have assisted that landlord or property management company in providing emergency shelter for the residents if they're severely impacted, but the city does not pick up the cost for that. Like, it's like, we can help you. We have these resources. These hotels will help you take people or move people there. But you have to pay for that piece. So we have lines of communication that are set up for those certain emergency types. I'm going to follow up on this specific one because I haven't heard about the Palmer Avenue coming through today, but I will circle back with our partners to find out what's going on there.
Yes.
Okay, and I will just add to that from an inspection standpoint. The Property Maintenance Code, Section 603, informs us that if there is mechanical equipment in the building, it must perform its intended function. So anytime mechanical equipment goes down, and I want to be clear here, when we say mechanical equipment, we're talking about HVAC, boilers, heat pumps, elevators. So that stuff is a part of mechanical equipment, the systems. We will, in fact, put a notice on that situation to make sure that we have it documented on our side, just in case there's a need for that notice to progress to our legal department for them to move it through the system, through the court system. So we do have a tool to identify when mechanical equipment is inoperable and a citation that follows if it doesn't get repaired.
Thank you for that. And just another plug, as you notice with some of the testimony, it's, again, these are things that really affect for the most part, older adults that are kind of locked into these situations because of fixed incomes and other things that are, health, other things that are going on. And it's just important to just continue to be an advocate. If you only are limited, you can still be that advocate and make those connections. And I think that's one thing that we all here are trying to just make sure that the connections continue because they don't know what to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Last but not least, Councilwoman Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for holding this hearing. I just wanted to plug a little bit. We will have a hearing in 2 weeks on 25-0141, which is sort of the next step in this work. The president, I think, built the foundation with the Strengthening Renter Safety Act, and we're moving forward on the second step, which is really looking at all properties, not just 20 and above, but also doing exactly what Councilman Jones talked about with this rental property receivership, so that if it's an egregious violator that refuses to get licensed and has all of these violations, they will go through a receivership process, which means that they're could be transferred to somebody else, which means that they can't do business here. And that, I think, is going to make a big difference, as well as all the foundational work that's happening here. My bill also has a lot of other components to it in terms of trying to address the fraud issues that we're seeing, but really trying to tackle this issue of non-licensed properties as well. So I'm looking forward to that, and I just want to sort of highlight that that's happening. And again, it's building on this really important work that's already been done with the Strengthening Renter Safety Act. I have two very specific questions. One is on the number of inspectors. Deputy Booker, we have had lots of conversations around the inspectors during budget time, et cetera. And it says here, you may have said this already, and I just want to be very clear that the housing inspectors that we see here, are they the same as our code enforcement inspectors that go out and do code enforcement out in the field? Are they the same people?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It is my understanding that we had talked about a couple of years ago that your ideal number of inspectors was like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How many, can you correct me on that? How many ideally would you like to have?
120. But I'm just, when you talk about the amount of work that gets done, because I'm saying that, and I'm just saying that kind of tongue in cheek, but
no, I need a number, because I think it's important that in order to implement this bill and the bill coming and everything that I think my colleagues are asking, we're going to absolutely need more inspectors. And we are prepared, if I may be so bold to speak for my colleagues, to really work hard on that advocacy, on figuring out how to make that happen.
yeah, I'm going to have to come back to you on that, because I don't know the body of work that's going to be required with the legislation that you're going to be putting forward. So I'll just like to just hold off on.
You need to speak up a little bit.
I just want to hold off on putting out a number until I understand the body of work that's going to have to be engaged with your legislation.
Okay, so I'll make a committee request for that number, maybe after the hearing on my bill in a couple weeks. That way there's a better understanding. Does that make sense? Is that realistic? Okay. It would be like maybe the week after. So sometime the last week of February. And again, the reason is to just make sure that we have everything we need. Obviously, these same inspectors are also going out and putting in the VBNs and all of the things that we've been talking about on the vacant property side as well. And so if we're going to really be able to answer all the 311s that we are now asking our residents to put in, we need to make sure that we've got the people to do it. So this is going to be super important now, especially as we're talking about budget. So if we're trying to help make sure that you've got the capacity that you need for this. So I would very much appreciate that. Obviously, there's the people and then there's the pay, so we'll have that conversation as well. But right now, I just need numbers so that we can work through that. So I appreciate that. My second very specific question is about the data on the priority dwelling list. I'm super happy this came out. I'm not happy who's in my district, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But we're going to, since we're talking about One West Conway, I want to focus on One West Conway. So the data here says it's unlicensed, which we know. It's got 0 open violations, which doesn't seem right to me, given what we heard from residents. 73 interior building code 311s. I'm assuming that is, there's no time frame here, during 2025. Okay, that seems low for that particular property as well. And then we have it as a no, that it is one of the high violation ones, even though you are meeting with them anyway. So I'm kind of curious, how does the data here shows that it's a priority dwelling unit, but it says that there's 0 outstanding violations. That doesn't seem right to me, given what our constituents have been saying here.
So I'm going to address 311s and then turn it to team. So one of the things that we actually discussed with Councilman Blanchard specifically about this building was that there was a low number of 311 calls. And we've made it to 73 because of an active push with the councilman and with members of the tenant council to be actively calling in. So we're not actually surprised by that number because it was actually much lower.
Okay. And then how does that then translate to, now that this is on here, that there's going to be inspections because there's 0 open notices? Again, that seems wrong. Okay, it seems like we need a little bit more time on that question, so.
Which I don't know we don't know what notices are open on it today or not. I can tell you that when it was, for 2025, it did not have the 4 or more notices in order to make that a criteria. So it got on the priority dwelling list because it had an open notice that was over the 90 days.
So that should be at least a 1? Right?
That was one criteria. And then the second criteria was the 311 calls. So those were the 2 criteria out of the 4 possible criteria that pushed it over. It did not meet the criteria for total notices in 2025. And it had an Inspire score on that property, but that Inspire score was an 89, so it did not meet the requirement of being 79 or lower. So it is a priority dwelling. It was not a priority dwelling when we met in October and first started trying to figure out how to pool. It got on the list, as the commissioner said, because of the 311 calls that came in after that last hearing.
Okay, so it sounds like those 311 calls, is that being translated into inspections to be able to get open notices? Because it sounds like, I mean, it just doesn't seem right, is all I'm saying. And actually, and then the other piece would be to, when we're reporting on this data, to give us the criteria of what got them on the priority dwelling list, because I think that would be helpful for us as well. You know, you'll have to do a landscape instead of a, in order to do that. But I do think that will be helpful for us. Because again, 0 open notices on this property doesn't seem right to me. So I'm hopeful that we can get some answers. I hope you don't mind, I'm using this as an example.
The other piece, we're looking at the current data, but just a reminder that that is a point in time analysis. So it doesn't mean that there aren't open notices today. This is a point in time that would be used in the evaluation to create the list that's required by the law.
Right, and do we have in there, and forgive me, I don't have the law in front of me, that this data gets updated every quarter? Is it what is the time frame?
So January 1st, we have to run the data, and by January 31st, have notified the properties that are priority dwellings. So that is the 2020, the properties we will be working on in 2026 is based off of the 2025 data. So these properties are the priority dwellings for 2026.
You don't think that we need to do this more often? Or is that something that you negotiated during the writing of the bill to say that you need time to go through all of these, get them up to par, get them off the list, and then there's going to be a new set?
Well, the next set, there are specific time periods that occur throughout this year of inspections and corrective action, meetings, inspections, and corrective actions. So like there's meetings that happen February, March, and then there'll be other meetings that happen October, November in there, and the corrective actions. And then the next list will be created based off of the criteria for 2026.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in talking about that a little bit more, but I understand where you're like, you want to work with all these people, get them off the list, and hopefully they'll be off the list. I do think that.
And if they're not, they're not.
And if they're not, they're not.
If they're, we want to be very clear.
If they're not, they're a candidate for receivership.
If they're not, they're not.
Yeah.
But there was timing in terms of the number of inspections, number of properties, meeting time, et cetera, in terms of staggering that's outlaid in the law.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, and hopefully we can, that those 73311s turn into the inspections, which then turn into the notices, which hopefully they will abate fairly quickly and actually repair things for our residents. But I just thought that number was a little strange, so I just wanted to make sure that we dealt with that, and I look forward to following up with the councilman to figure that out, because I will, as you know, I'm a data person, so I'm going to deep dive on all of these, because I'd be interested to look at, especially the ones in my district, by the way, and make sure that, because I just want to understand what the implications of the criteria are, because as we're going into this bill with adding to this one with my bill, we may, if we need to do some adjustments, we can, or we need to put in another bill for later. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can, just from a data standpoint, because I also geek out on the data, there was one property that met 3 of the 4 criteria. There was one property that got on because of 311 calls. There are a total of 7 properties that have Inspire scores. 3 of those were failing Inspire scores. So that, the other 4 were not, so that was not a criteria, even though they had an Inspire score. So the bulk of what is on this list is because the properties had 4 or more violation notices in 2025 and had at least one of those notices open for over 90 days. And that's what put 35 out of 38 properties on this list.
Okay. Yeah, I think that there's some additional just sort of understanding where this data comes from. I mean, yeah, so I appreciate that. The only last thing would be just on the sort of getting the word out about using 311. I think people do get afraid because they, don't want to, but there is an opportunity for a anonymous, which is good. So will there be some marketing around that we could also be helpful with? I mean, we want to be your partners in this. So we want to, if you're going to do a thing that says call 311 because of this, we will share it with our residents. And I think that's going to be important.
We'll work with MOGR to share that with the council.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question. So you're saying that 35 out of 38 are on it for violations over 90 days. So does that include, like, if any of them are under dispute? Like, does that, if they're disputing it, do they still end up on the list?
They could, yes. I don't know that any of these are under dispute. I didn't get into that. That would come out when we have the meetings with the individual property owners and managers and, say, like, here's how you got on the list and you abated these notices, you haven't abated these. And if there are issues there, then that's where that would be addressed. But the requirement, you have to meet 2 criteria. So one criteria was that they had a notice over 90 days. And I think the youngest notice was, 106 or 108 days, but most of them are well over 150, 200, some are 300 days old.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Some are still open.
All right. Is there anybody else who signed up that wished to testify that didn't get in on the first round? Oh, that's a slippery slope if we start with second round. Let her ask the question.
Okay, you all stated that we, Hanover Square had zero violations.
Hey, you want to just start over, state your name for the record?
My name is Pamela Brown, and I'm from Hanover Square. How can we have zero violations? The reason we had zero violations is because nobody came out to inspect. So how are you going to violate something that you didn't inspect? And then, yes, it is true. And when we call 311, I tell them we need our own separate confirmation numbers. They'll give the same confirmation numbers to several people.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, thank you for that. And I'm not sure what district you're in, but I would just recommend that you set up a site visit with your Oh, the same one, okay. Just set up a site visit with your council person, they'll invite the agencies, and I'm sure you guys will get it all sorted out. Is there anybody else who has not testified that wishes to testify?
I just want to say one thing. They was talking about property owners. Now, the property owner of Hanover Square, how would you know what's not your property line? Because it seems like he don't know the property line, because the manager don't even know the property line, because we have everything that's connected to our building, like the disability ramps and the steps. She keep claiming it's not their property.
So sir, we allow everybody one opportunity to testify. So we're gonna honor that, but you can wait around after and speak to members of the housing department or your council person to try to get answers on that. Is there anybody else who wished to testify that did not have an opportunity to?
Hey, Mr. Chair, because I think there was some, can you give DHCD the chance to explain? There's a difference between a violation and an open violation, if they could explain that. I think that was what that confusion was.
Sure.
Sure. In regards to 1 West Conway, today, this moment, I have not looked it up today, so I don't know how many notices are open or not open. The prior discussion was what got them onto the priority dwelling list and the criteria there. But once a notice is issued, the notice needs to be corrected by the property owner or their maintenance person or whoever they hire to correct it. Once the work is done, they're supposed to contact the housing inspector, have that violation re-inspected so that it can be abated. So that would be a closed notice. An open notice would be one that has not been abated yet. And so one of the criteria of being on the property dwelling list is that you have not abated that notice in 90 days. You've had it open for 90 days, so you haven't abated the notice. And that's, we want in situations where tenant calls in or inspectors out there and they see a violation, we're going to be issuing the notice. We would like the property management company to address it quickly. If they can address it in less than 90 days, that will keep them off the list. So that's the difference there.
Thank you. Ma'am,
Good evening.
If you can state your name for the record.
Danielle Bowman, and I live in Sharp Leaden Hole. And I see that everybody else is from Hanover, whatever, but I'm from Sharp Leaden Hole, and that's down on Hamburg. So we've been having issues for years. It started out small issues. I had a rat come in my apartment. I live on the ground level. They had took out my air conditioner. At the time, it was for the air conditioner to replace it with a new air conditioner. So they brought, I think the air conditioner was too small that they replaced it. So I kept telling them, like, is a rat gonna come in here? Rats are gonna come in here because, I had open spaces on the side. They kept saying, oh, no rat can't get in. A couple of weeks later, thank God for my cat, a rat was in my apartment. They kept telling me the rat wasn't in there. So the cat wound up killing the rat. Showed them the picture of the rat. They still think that the rat wasn't in my apartment. I have cockroach issues that I've been having since I've been living there. Like, they just come from everywhere. I can't turn my light on in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. They jumping off the sink and, stuff like that. And they fixed the bathroom, I can say. They sealed everything in the bathroom, but they still didn't seal, like, from the baseboards of our floor. It's about this much of a gap if you take the baseboard, cheap baseboard stuff that they have around the wall. It's like a gap this big from the floor. So that's how, being as though I'm on the ground level, the cockroaches are constantly coming in. Now we're starting to have roach issues. I guess that's from a tenant. The property management team are horrible. You can never get in touch with management. You call, she's never reachable. You know, you email her, she might email you back. You call the office, they never answer. It's just the same little issues that everybody have in all of these complexes, and it's becoming ridiculous. We have trash. The dumpsters are ridiculous. We go a whole week with trash just everywhere. I have to leave out for work when it's still dark outside, so I have to walk past the dumpsters by myself to get to the bus stop. And I mean, there's trash everywhere, rats running. So when we go to court, we have legal aid helping us right now for escrow. But it's still like, I mean, things are not moving fast enough. I guess things take time. And I'm just here to speak because I see nobody here is from where I'm from. So that's why I got up to speak. But we have a lot of issues down there. And it's ridiculous that the neighborhood that we live in, we have people coming from the stadium that have to walk through our parking lot and see all of this trash like we living in slum. I go to work every day. I pay my rent on time. And it's like nothing, like they don't care. Like you put in a request for maintenance. They have a problem, an issue. I don't know. It's just something with maintenance. Every time you turn around, it's a new maintenance guy. We had so many, I've been there for this is my 5th year. I think we've been through like 5 or 6 new maintenance people. Like, it's just ridiculous. Every year is a new maintenance. We have no security. They have drug dealers around here every day. No security anymore. It's like they just pay when they feel like paying for contracts to pick up trash. And I had to shovel my own front when that ice was out there. Let me back up and correct myself. I had to rake the ice off of my front because I didn't have a shovel, but I did have a rake. And I had to break the ice up myself just to make a path so I can get to work, you know, the next morning. And it took them 2 to 3 days to come out to even took them actually 3 days to come and make a path for everything else.
Yeah.
On the
So if you can just wrap up just because.
Sure, that's all, basically, that's all I wanted to really bring up, something of the issues of Sharp-Layton Hall, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. So is there anybody else who has not testified yet? Okay, seeing that no one else has come to testify, I want to thank you all for coming today. The Housing Department will stick around a little bit after to answer individual questions that you may have. That concludes today's hearing. We are now in recess. Thank you.